Okay.
Hey, it's Andy Fiffick here with Radiator Complete Car Care. We're at our Strongsville location today. We figured since many of you are stuck at home with nothing better to do, we would do our first ever Facebook Live program for you. This is your chance to learn a little bit about cars, see what goes on with the cars and the vehicles that we work on every day, and also to post your questions that we'd be happy to try to answer for you along the way. We're sitting here working actually on a Caravan here today, which is basically also a utility vehicle. This is, you can see the ladder racks on the top. This guy's in the service industry. It came in for some basic maintenance, but it also had some severe noises in the front of the vehicle. So as always, what we do with any vehicle we bring it in, we do, today, the first thing we do is disinfect it before we even bring it in the shop to make sure it's safe. Then we take a road test on the vehicle. We want to take the opportunity to experience what you, the client, is bringing to us and experience it for ourselves to find out what's that noise, what's it sound like, is it a clunk, is it a clank, is it a bang, you know, is it making a rubbing noise, a screeching noise. Believe it or not, all those different things are different clues for us on how we're going to try to diagnose your vehicle for you. So in this case, this had a clanking noise in the front of the car when you hit bumps, and what we found out on it during the inspection is it has bad front struts on it. So most of you have no clue what a strut is. A strut is this. A strut is basically a shock absorber with the spring attached. Now if you look at this one closely in here, you'll see the oil in here. What has happened is the seal in the front of this, on this strut, has gone bad. The oil has been leaking out, and then it loses its rebound capacity and its ability to actually balance the front of the vehicle when you go over bumps. So, in the old days, on a car you would have a spring, and you would have a separate shock absorber. And then this part here is called a stabilizer link. So, on a strut, everything is all put into one unit, so this is all serviced as one assembly or by individual parts. So, many times we would buy the strut or the shock absorber part of it separate, take this spring off, take this mounting plate off, or what we call a turn plate, as if you look at this, it basically allows your steering to turn on the car. So this stays attached to the car and your wheel turns, so this has to be, so this turning plate, the strut, the insulators, the spring assembly, we have to take that apart, just put the new strut in. Pretty much today anymore, this is all serviced by a whole strut assembly. We get the whole unit just like this. We will take off the stabilizer link and reinstall this on the new strut when we put it back in the car. So this would beg you to say that, okay, we just took the whole front of the vehicle apart. As you'll see under here, the front spindle is just hanging out of nowhere land right now. So when we put this all back together, it's very important that we do an alignment on the vehicle, because this is actually the part that attaches to the car, which attaches to the wheel, which sets on the ground. So if this isn't aligned properly, the car's not going to go down the road properly, or you'll get bad tire wear out of the vehicle, and it won't handle right. So on that note, when we put a new strut in, you're always going to want to do a front end alignment on it. And it's something really you should do a front end alignment on your car, especially in our market in Cleveland with all the potholes. Have your alignment checked and done every single year. You might not notice the slight pull or the slight wear on your tire until it's too late. But having your front end alignment aligned every year will save your tires immensely. You'll get the most mileage out of your tire, and you're going to get the best handling. So back to the strut on that. So now, it almost sounds simple that we would just take this off the vehicle. Not that simple. You look over here, the struts are literally mounted up through and into the unibody up underneath here. This is where it comes through. Well, that whole assembly we could get to now, but in reality, this part here is called your windshield wiper transmission. This is the unit that actually connects right in here, goes in like this, and this bolts in, and this is where your windshield wiper blade's attached to. So this is actually called the windshield wiper transmission. The transmission sounds a little funny for that, but it takes the motion from the motor, transmits it into an oscillating motion for the wipers to wipe across the windshield. So we have to get all of the bracketry out. In this case, this is the cowling that would go up inside here. So this this is all hidden under here, so we have to take the cowling off. We have to go then take the windshield wiper motor out, and then we can get to the struts. And then when we go to align it, we need to have this accessible to us too, so we can align this top and make sure there's any adjustments we need to do in there. So it sounds like it'd be a very simple job. In reality, changing struts could be very difficult. This is one of the more simpler ones out there. There's some vehicles that take a lot more work, and there's a lot of kits or bolts or hardware you have to change when you put the struts in too. So strut changing jobs actually vary from vehicle to vehicle. So it's not a one price kind of one thing to do when you go to do it. Same with alignments.
Go ahead and just review again what's going on. What are we replacing on the car?
And this here, we're replacing the strut assembly, and that's this piece right here. And it's some people call them McPherson struts. That was the brand that came out, or the gentleman that invented it. It's called a McPherson strut, which is the bearing plate or turning plate, the spring assembly, the shock absorber, or the strut itself. And in this case, this is the stabilizer link also.
Great.
So that's what we got going on there. Now, as you can see, the car is up on the lift. We go through. Every time a vehicle comes into us, we do a 39-point safety inspection on the vehicle. So we go around and we look at everything. So in this case, let's put it up in there and take a peek around under here, see what we see. First things on this one, what I would notice right now, if you take a look at these rotors here, you see they're extremely shiny. That is what we call glazing on it. So these rotors are glazed up quite a bit. What that will do is it will actually increase your stopping distance because the rotor is polished or glazed. So when the brake caliper tries to squeeze down on that rotor, and that's what the caliper does, this is the brake caliper. When you apply pressure on your brake pedal, you actually take a piston in here, squeezes this caliper together with two brake pads and squeezes this rotor. If it's shiny like that, it tends to slip a little bit more, so you increase your braking distance. So maybe this car would normally stop from 60 to 0, let's say 150 feet. It may be 160 or 70 feet now, you know, so it's just going to take longer to stop. So that's something we look at. Brakes are not bad. If we look inside here, the brake pads themselves, very difficult to see, but if you look in where my finger is, these brake pads are probably about 50% worn. So that would not be a recommendation to do anything. However, if the client really wanted to, you could take the rotors off, we would resurface them, get rid of that shyness on it, and then scuff up the brake pad the same way, put it on, and we can get that stopping distance back together. A lot of times, and many times, when you see glazed rotors, they may be squeaking. It's one of the indicators that you get a brake squeak out of these when they're shiny like that. They're slipping a little bit, they'll squeak. So if we mosey around through underneath the car here, I don't see anything too obvious on here that concerns me.
Andy, what is this?
This right here is what we call the resonator. Okay, the resonator is a fancy name for a second muffler. So your first muffler is right here on your exhaust system. All right, and you got your whole exhaust system here. And while you're at it, let's look at something here, Bill. If you look right here where my finger is, there's a leak right there. See the black soot coming out around this clamp? That is something that an experienced person is only going to notice. All right, and let me maybe get on that for a moment. I believe, personally, and it's a Radar philosophy, that the most experienced person you have in the shop is who should be doing your oil changes and your safety inspection on your car. I've been doing this since 1974. I mean, it's a long time. I've been around a long time. Guys like us, the experienced guys that's been doing this 10, 15, 20 years, we've seen it all. We've done it all. So when I look at that, I see that black carbon there, I could literally go to the client and say, hey, we got a problem right here. Not sure if it's rusted, the clamp's bad, the seal's bad in there. Is there a gasket in there? Is there a donut or an O-ring in there? But you do have a small exhaust leak right there. So I'd be venture to say, I'd be wanting to start this up and see how bad it's leaking. Because we definitely don't want the carbon monoxide to get into the cabin. You know, so you could have an issue here. You could poison the client in the vehicle. So that's something, you look around there. But so this is our first, get back to the original. This is the muffler. And to make the vehicle even quieter, they put a second muffler, which they call a resonator, in on the vehicle, and that's what this one is. So all in all, this part of the exhaust system looks good, except for that clamp. That bothers me on that one. So we walk around this side, let's see what we got. And pretty much the same thing on the rotors here. And you could really, Phil, if you angle a camera just right, you'll see some checking in there. Those are little hard spots. That's where a higher spot, you got a little more heat in it than the other. Again, that's an indication that, you know, if it was my vehicle, I'd resurface those rotors and throw some new pads on it. For a client though, I would have to say, you know what, let's take a look at them again on the next oil change. Let's make sure they don't get anything worse. You don't need to spend money on it now. If you're very anal like I am about my vehicles, I would be taking those off, resurfacing and putting them back on. Shocks here look good if you notice. No oil on this shock. You remember our strut had the oil leaking out of it. No oil on this shock, so that looks pretty good. If we mosey around under here, and here's a funny one. Most people always think, where's my spare on my car? Everybody always thinks there's spares in the back. Look where the spare tire is on this. It's in the middle of the vehicle. So if you've got a flat tire and you got to go change your tire, you literally got to get this thing out from under the middle of the vehicle. So looking at our exhaust here again, this one here, they got a Cadillac converter here. They actually have a pre-muffler on this one too. So they really want this car to be quiet going down the road. But this is the flex pipe up in here, and this has a cat up inside of there. Kind of hard to see without the lights in here. But if you notice, we're not seeing any oil dripping. We're not seeing any stains. We're not seeing anything that's under this vehicle. That's a deep concern to me. No concern about that leak back there, though. So we come over here, and one of the things I always want to look at on these is this right here is called our half shaft or drive shaft. This is our constant velocity joints right here and right here. What that allows it to do is the half shaft or drive shaft is what turns the wheel. That's what takes the power from the engine through the transmission and actually gets it on the ground and makes the car move. So this is the CV joint or constant velocity joint. That has to be able to transmit the power with the wheel going up and down all the time. So that just flexes with the car going up and down over bumps. A lot of times these boots crack, dry rot, get damaged by something kicking up and hitting them. So if you see these cracked or cut and the oil or the grease all coming out of it, that's the time that we need to be concerned. So one of the big things we always look when we're under a vehicle is look at the CV joints. The CV joint goes bad, you're stuck on the side of the road. It'll break. So that's, you never want to have a client break down on the road. So we try to look at that. That one looks great. Looking over at this side, they both look great also. So on that case, we have nothing that I'd be concerned with on that. So another thing we do when we look at these vehicles is we would take a large pry bar, not a screwdriver. And we go in and we literally check every single bushing on this suspension. We look to see if there's too much wear in there. We would go and check this bushing over here. Yeah. And actually, you hear that noise? Now if you get to hear that noise. All right, this is a known problem with these vehicles for these bushings starting to go bad. So this bushing here, this bushing here, this part is called the lower control arm. Would not be surprised in the future that that bushing is going to fail because we know, number one, it's a pattern failure. And let me explain pattern failures for a minute. We work on roughly around 30,000 cars a year here at Radar between our locations. And for most of the part Northeast Ohio, there's a pretty good mix of different vehicles, but for the most part, it's almost always the same kind of vehicles. We're not working on a lot of Jaguars, we're not working on a lot of Alfa Romeos or Maseratis or whatever. We're working on everyday people's cars. Take a Caravan, thousands and thousands and thousands of them, are on the road, hundreds of thousands on the road. So if you look at, let's say, 5,000 caravans a year, you start noticing the same pattern failure over and over and over again. So if we say 4,000 caravans with this bushing going bad, guess what we're going to look at first time the next one comes in? Let's take a look at that bushing, because we know it's a pattern failure and it's destined to go bad, just a matter of when. So we always want to look at that. So this one here, just listen to that noise, tells us that there's going to be a problem there. We'll walk around to this side. We'll do the same thing. And actually, you hear the same thing. Now, not that bad. Good chance the client is not hearing this yet, but they will sooner or later. It's going to go there. So, and then this bushing over here, we'll check it again too. And that one looks good and tight. So, tight, intact, but starting to make noise. So we know it's going to be failing eventually. And unfortunately, when we go to do this repair, you're changing this whole control arm now. You're going to get this bushing, and you're going to get this whole arm with your lower ball joint also in the vehicle. So that's what we got. So let's take a look over here again. And this is our engine over here. On this side, this is our transmission over here. Now, let's get a light we can grab here. Get a little bit better. Okay. That should show a little bit better here. So this is our transmission right here, or what we, in this case, you would call this a transaxle. The reason we call it that is not only a transmission, is also the axle assembly to get the direction. If you remember, you would always have an axle and a rear wheel drive in the back. In the front we call it transaxle, because the transmission and the axle differential per se is all in one. Where on a rear wheel drive vehicle you have the transmission up front and your differential in the back. So the differential and transmission's in here, and for the most part this looks pretty darn dry. Now you see a little bit of old seepage here. I would have to say that's probably just debris, dirt, or something, that's coming off over the years. This is all just dry. If we saw drips coming out of here, we saw any discoloration of any fluids coming out of there, we'd want to be concerned. And you come over here and you look at the engine. This is the engine oil pan here. Again, nothing I see to be alarmed out. And it looks pretty good. This part over here, and Bill, wait till Bill get on my back end here. This is actually one of the transaxle or engine mounts right in here. So you'd want to take a good look at that. It looks intact and good. If we see that dry rotted, we see it cracked, we see it coming apart, that's an indicator that one would be bad. And let's see if we can see the one up on this side. Yeah, it's way up in there. But the best I could see, that one looks pretty good too. But you guys can't see it, but believe me, it's right up in there. Same thing that we had over here, but it's on the back side of the engine. Now, venture to say, if we had to change those, you can see where the one up front's not bad. Here's where the one is in the back. It's right up in here. So this takes a little bit more work. We'd probably have to get this shield out of the way. And that's your transmission, or your power steering rack is right under it right here. And Bill, if you want to come around on this side, this is your shaft coming down from your steering column into your rack and pinion unit right here. This is that mount I'm talking about. All these lines for the power steering look good. The mount looks good. And then we'll have another mount on this side, but it's on the top. So we'd want to take a look at that too. One more thing I'd be looking at here is I can get a good look at the belt in the front of the engine. Do we have any leaks on the front of the engine? Does the belt look cracked or dry? Everything up there looks nice and dry too. So one of the pet peeves guys like us will look at, we see a fluid mark anywhere, we want to know where it came from. It has to be leaking. Your car does not use fluids. They're in there for their extended period of life, then you need to change them. If we look under any vehicle and we start seeing wet things dripping around, that's an indicator we probably need to talk to you. So on this one here, we didn't look at the front brakes yet, but this is the brake caliper. This actually has two pistons, 1, 2, and you can actually see the pistons sticking out through here, and that's our front brake pad right here, and this is the other one here. And those two are pretty darn good shape. We actually have a tool to measure that, but after doing this for 45 years, I gotta tell you that's a little bit better than 50%. But if you look at the rotors again, look at the glaze on it. You can actually see the sun, the shine. So I can do that. Here's another good view. This is where that strut goes, all the way up into there. So the strut mounts all the way up in the top of the unibody, comes down and attaches right here to the front spindle, and that's what keeps all the weight and controls everything on the front of your car. So that's it. So looking at this, so only thing on this, glazed rotors, brake pads look good. This may be an indicator. When we see glazed rotors, a lot of times it's somebody that is either too light on their brakes, or they're hauling a lot of weight around where they're causing it to work a little bit harder on the brakes and heating these up and glazing them. Being that we know that this is a commercial van, the back is loaded with all kind of tools. This van's probably hauling around 2,000 pounds all the time. It's only made for maximum probably 2,000 pounds on occasion when you put 4 or 5 people in it. This thing's loaded to the hilt with tools in the back, so these brakes are glazing because he's hauling a lot of weight all the time on this vehicle. So that would be something we would take into consideration. Next brake job, I'd probably want to talk to the client about using a different brake pad, just to know that we have a situation here that he is using this as a commercial vehicle. It's a passenger vehicle that's being used as a commercial vehicle, and maybe you want to just use a different brake pad on it that would help prevent this. But the downside of this is this van's probably stopping 20, 30 feet longer than it should. Doesn't sound like a lot until you got to stop and miss a train or miss a child running out in the street or avoid an accident or something. That 20 feet could mean a lot. I mean, that's really at least the length of the vehicle. And there's a lot of studies on that. Don't take my word for it, but worn brakes, they increase the brake to stop. So, looking at that, this car passes underneath pretty darn good. A couple things I'd be concerned and note, but all in all, pretty good. So, let's let her down and we'll take a peek.
Actually, 2 questions while we're under here.
Sure.
So what is a bushing and what does it do?
A bushing is just some form of, usually it's going to be made out of rubber, urethane, something that it allows something to move without binding. Another name would be a bearing. A bearing allows things to move without, you take 2 different surfaces that need to rub against each other. Here's a perfect indicator. This is a bearing in the top here. This allows this strut to turn when this is bolted to the vehicle. A bushing absorbs the stress and it still allows it to turn, so when you hit the big bump, the rubber bushing absorbs some of that jolt. Where if you had a solid bearing there, we'd feel that all the way through because it's solid. So bushing does a little bit more of a cushioning and also allows movement without distortion.
Great.
Yeah.
Another question. So there's a wire here.
Yes. That's a good question, Bill.
What does that do?
Well, that's a wire. All right, this here is a wire. But what this does, this goes all the way over, and on the back side of your rotor, and you won't see it here, but the rotor itself, on the back side of the rotor is what we have called a reluctor ring. What the reluctor ring does, it has little slots in it. This is a sensor that has a little photo eye in it that reads those slots. So as the thing's rotating, it's counting, and we'll actually see a waveform pattern on our scope when we check that. And it's a process we do to look when you have an ABS light come on, your ABS isn't working right, your car's not stopping right. One of the first things we're going to look at is what this wire is connected to, and that's the wheel speed sensor. So what the wheel speed sensor does, it's reading the reluctor on the back of this rotor, and it's counting those little slots. And it knows that at 35 miles an hour, I'm supposed to be seeing, let's say, 3,500 slots per minute. It'd be a lot more than that, but let's just keep round numbers. I'm looking at the rear one, and that should be 3,500. That one should be 3,500. That one should be 3,500. They're all reading the same. Everything's kosher. We're good. The computer says, hey, we're doing exactly what we want. So let's say we're driving down the road and all of a sudden this one's reading 2,800, all the other ones are reading 3,500. The computer knows there's a problem. it's literally going to then warn you that you have a problem with your ABS. So the question is, what's wrong with it? Did the wire get damaged? Is the rotor bad? Is the reluctor bad? Is the sensor bad? Is the connector bad? You know, we don't know. So then we would go in and scan and scope the vehicle and actually start counting it. So a lot of times what you'll find is in the Cleveland market, the reluctor will get all rusted up. A couple of those little holes in it will start to plug up, and then it misses a beat. So the thing's running around, it goes da-da-da, miss, da-da-da-da, miss, da-da-da-da, miss. So it's going to send a signal there's a problem. Or it could be the sensor itself goes bad. Now you got to realize that's mounted up on your wheel. The highest failure rate we see is on the right front wheel. It hits all the slush, it hits all the potholes, it hits just about everything along the curb. So the right front wheel takes more damage on almost any vehicle around the world, just the way we drive. I guess maybe in the areas you drive on the other side of the road, it'd be the other side. But for practical purposes where we live, the right front wheel is the first one that gets the damage because it's on the curb side. It's hitting the curbs, it's hitting the chuck holes, it's hitting the stuff in the road. And mainly, road salt and road brine gets up here and starts corroding all this stuff. So that wire right there is going to the wheel speed sensor, and that there then reads and counts how fast the wheel's actually moving. And that's a big determination with your ABS system. You throw that name around ABS, but ABS stands for automatic braking system. Been around since I think about the early 90s. It's been a while. Great system. So what happens is when you apply the brake pedal, the computer and the system literally calculates how much braking you want and then determines how much braking it's going to put to each one of the wheels. So if this wheel happens to be on ice, it's going to reduce the pressure on this one and put more on the other three so you don't spin out. Same with anything else. If you're on ice on all four of them, you're going to be sliding because you just won't have much braking. Nonetheless, the ABS system is a great system, and it's probably saved multi-millions of lives over the years that it's there. Now what they also do is they take the ABS now and it's tied into what we call stability or traction control too. Two different things. Stability control keeps you from being stupid. So if you're going around a corner and let's say you overcorrect and you start to spin, the stability control is going to literally deaccelerate the engine, and it's going to start applying the brakes on the four different wheels in a sense to keep you from spinning out. It's going to try to straighten the car up and keep it stable. It's going to save your butt per se. And then traction control does just the opposite of that. It's trying to limit the torque to whatever drive wheels you have so one doesn't slip. You know, in the old days when we were kids, we used to go out in parking lots and spin the cars out on purpose, just to have fun, you know, doing donuts in parking lots. Can't even do that anymore unless you turn the traction control off. But the traction control, the stability control, the ABS systems, they work all together. They also work along with the airbags, and they work along with the throttle and the engine and the transmission and everything, which kind of leads to the computers in the car today. The cars are so smart. I mean, so smart. I was reading, I think it was last year, the one new Cadillac came out and it had 9 computers in it, in one car. So the computers are controlling everything, and now the computers are literally operating everything. In the old days, if you wanted to turn on a turn signal, we would turn a switch on the dash, the lever, we would send a signal down, put it through a blinker, little can blinker, and literally send the signal to the back. Today, when you turn the turn signal on, you literally request that, hey, I'd like the right turn signal to be on. The computer looks at everything and actually sends a signal out to a module on each end of the car. The module turns the blinker on and off. So it's not so simple as tracing down one wire through a blinker switch. Everything is in the computer, it's there, and you have to be in it with a computer to find it. We use scanners all day long, every day. So, Bill, we have any questions yet by any chance?
No questions, just the bushing one that came up.
Yeah, okay. So, getting back to the computers on the car. Our technicians today have to really be sharp. And I'm going to drop the car down and we'll show you what the scanner looks like here. Got it away, Bill?
No, you're good.
Just for the heck of it, I'm going to look what we got in here. This vehicle's loaded to the hilt in the back. A lot of stuff in here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of goes into our theory about the brakes. So anyway, so on this vehicle, every vehicle has at least 2 computers in it today. And many of them have more than that. The more high-line vehicles, the higher vehicle options it has. You know, like your Cadillac has 9, probably your Lincolns and that. I think, you know, it goes up to a Rolls-Royce that may have 10, 12 computers in it. They just try to get everything to be so automatic. But at least you have 2 computers. One is going to be what we call our PCM or ECM. And then we have, and that's the power control module or engine control module, electronic control module. Every manufacturer calls it something a little bit different. And then we have another one called the body control module. And again, they call that many, many different things going around. But those 2 talk to each other. So the one pretty much has to do with driving the vehicle, power control module, or the engine control module, electronic control module. That's the one that gets everything working, moving, doing all that. Then the BCM, the body control module, takes over for the windows, the lights, and anything else that's not to drive the vehicle. So those 2 need to talk to each other all the time. You know, take something as simple as a lot of you will have a car, you'll drive down the road, and as soon as you hit 5 miles an hour, the door locks. Big, nice safety feature. The BCM needs to know from the PCM that you hit 5 miles an hour. So client may come in and say, hey, my automatic door locks aren't working. Okay, so we got to literally go in and look at the data in the PCM and see, is it reading the speed correctly? Okay, is it sending it correctly to the BCM? Is the BCM reading that data? And then is the BCM doing the correct thing with the data? And then is the modules inside the door reacting to the signal? So that system is called a CAN, or Common Area Network. So we literally got to go in and read and watch that signal travel through the vehicle. And then we can literally say, you know what? Yep, it was sent here but not received here. So what's that mean to us? Well, a lot of times we got to put our thinking hat on, and a lot of times you got to be a little bit of investigation. Not more than one. It's very common that it was in a body shop, may have been in an accident. You made somebody try to add a stereo to the vehicle. You had somebody try to work on their own vehicle. They may have damaged a wire along the way. They may have hooked up their new stereo ground to the ground that goes to the BCM. So there's things that are out of our control, or what do I want to say, out of norm that we need to look at. Very simple to say, signal, 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 no signal. Okay, did it send it? Yeah, it sent it. It didn't receive it. Okay, that must be bad, it didn't receive it. Well, we need to go a little bit deeper and then pull that wire off and go, is that wire actually getting the signal on the other end? Then we got to make sure it's there. And if it is there, then you go, okay, we know it ended here, let's go find out why this part or the BCM isn't working. Could be the BCM ground is bad. Could be the BCM power is not correct. There could be a multitude of things. So it's kind of disturbing to us, I guess, as technicians and service people, that a lot of people think I could drive up to any of the parts stores, they're going to plug in a scanner, and they're going to tell me what's wrong with my car. Well, they may tell you that you have, let's say, a misfire on cylinder number 3. And the person is going to say, well, what causes that? Well, you know, it could be just a simple tune-up, you know, you can try spark plugs, you try this, kind of that. Okay, give me a set of spark plugs, I'll go ahead and put those in. So the person goes home, puts the spark plugs in, and exactly the same problem. Well, it wasn't the spark plug. Well, what was it? That's where we got to dig in and find out. So we got to go and look at, why is cylinder number 3 not working in this case? Well, cylinder number 3 may not be getting enough fuel. Maybe it's getting too much fuel and it's getting flood out and fouling the plugs. Maybe the spark it's getting is not enough to actually ignite all the fuel. Maybe the spark is delayed. Maybe the coil pack is bad. Maybe the injector's bad. I could give you 15 different reasons off the top of my head why cylinder number 3 may be bad. Cylinder number 3 may have a vacuum leak going to it because there's a hose broken to a port right next to the intake manifold for the number 3 runner. So it's real simple to say, obvious thing. What will happen next, I'll almost bet on it. Person will go back to the parts store and go, hey, that didn't fix it. Well, you know, it could be the coil. You know, those go bad too. All right, give me a coil. I'll put the coil on it. That didn't fix it. And I'm not trying to toot our horn here, but we see so many people waste money on doing repairs because they were chasing the problem instead of figuring out the problem. And then somewhere between the second and third time that it isn't fixed, it ends up with guys like us. So then we got to go in and baseline that vehicle. One of the things we're always going to do is check the battery. And some people will say, well, you know, you're trying to sell me a battery, all I got is a drivability problem. Why the heck are you selling me a battery? Well, the battery is what provides all the startup voltage and all the voltage to your computers. The computers run on what we call a 5-volt reference. Now, you know your battery is 12 volts. In reality, your battery is closer to 13 volts. 12.7, 13.2, somewhere in there is what you actually run a battery at. The computers on the whole car needs very minimal amperage, but they need at least 5 volts of voltage to work properly. So can you imagine something as simple as your microwave at home? If your microwave at home was only getting 55 volts instead of 120 volts coming out of the wall, you think your microwave's going to work? It's not going to even turn on. Same here with this. Same with a refrigerator. If a refrigerator doesn't have power at home, it's not going to work. So if the voltage or the reference voltage going to the computers is off, we can't trust what the computer's going to do. It could be starting to act a little, let's say, drunk. It could be doing things and setting codes that we don't even know are there. So the first thing we're going to do is check your battery. So do a battery test. If we got good voltage, then we're not going to even believe that. We're going to come over here. And we're going to hook a scanner up to your car. So I don't have the car running now, so we don't have all the data streaming here. If this was running and we're doing a full-blown test, I could go through all the different PIDs, all the different levels of windows in here and literally pin down everything. But we would be looking at this and go, what's my voltage at my BCM looking at? Do I have a full 5 volts there? So let's say I have 4.2 volts here, but I got a perfectly good battery up there. So where's my problem? I got a power issue coming to this computer. So then we got to pull out a wiring diagram, and that's a big schematic, shows where every wire in the car goes. Thank God they're color coded, but they repeat the colors and they change all over the place. So they're sometimes difficult. But we then got to go trace down that one wire that comes from that battery circuit to this computer and find out why there's an issue. So we get a thing, what we call a voltage drop. So let's say coming through the firewall, there's a connector where all the wires connect together. It's been corroded with road salt and brine and water. It's got in there and it's corroded those pins. So the corrosion is stopping the voltage from going through. So I have 5 volts coming into this side of the pin. This side I only got 4.2. I got a bad corrosion connector in there. Now, there's no test on God's green earth that you could plug into here and find that. Again, so when you go to the parts store and they say, hey, you got a computer issue, it's not reading right. Okay, you're gonna put a $300 BCM in the car without knowing that you actually need it, and you tested that it has the info and data and the connections that want to do it? We would not. People do, but we do not. So you find that connection, you fix that vehicle, and If you think about that, that's a lot more work than just changing that part. Finding that problem is where the difficult work is, and finding that problem effectively, efficiently, and timely is something. But somebody has to pay for that. I mean, so do you want to put a $300 BCM in, or do you want to pay somebody maybe $150 to fix it right? And that's where the rub comes sometimes, that, you have to pay for diagnostics, because that's what fixes the car. The diagnostics is really where it's at. You could change parts all day long, but if you don't know why you're changing them, not sure you're actually going to fix the problem. I've seen cars, they put the BCM, the PCM in it, they've done this, they've done the tune-up, they did the wires, they did the spark plugs, they put air cleaners in it, and now it shows up here. Okay, now that's our worst nightmare, because we're not sure they did all that right. So we got to go back and make sure what they didn't cover up or make the problem even worse. So we got to almost like baseline it again. Then we got to start at the basics. And you'll see the client go, well, why you got to charge me to diagnose it? I already did all that stuff. Well, you didn't start with the basics. Let's get back. Do I have 5 volts? Did it show up here? Did it do what it was supposed to do? Do I have a proper ground? Did I check for voltage drops? And go from there. So we will get all those cars, and they have spent, let's say, $1,000 on trying to get this car running right, because it's an intermittent problem that only happens once in a while. Worst ones. And we'll do it, and it won't act up the first day. Won't act up the second day. Might not act up the third day. And that's where we, as technicians, when you have an erratic problem, is our worst nightmare. Because we literally can't duplicate the problem you have when it's sitting there with us. And that's one of the reasons we developed the program over almost 40 years ago now, by giving away free loaner cars. Because I would be asking you as a client, say, I can't get this thing to act up. Take my car, keep it a day, 2 days, 3 days, give me the permission to drive your car. I'll go pick up lunch with it, I'll drive it home, I'll go pick up parts, I'll do whatever until it acts up and I can catch it. Once I catch it, then I have an area where I can go look to find the problem. And in this case, you could almost bet $1 million in every time. It's one of the most stupidest things that's been overlooked to fix that car. It'll always be something that was missed along the way of just changing parts. And it makes us look like heroes, but you feel bad for the client because they spent all this money and time. Think about it. If they change 5, 6 parts, how many times they run to the parts store, went to this shop and then to that shop and this shop and that shop, nobody took the time to fix it right or diagnose it right. So I don't want to bore everybody here, but we literally live by 4 rules here. Number 1 is we want to fix the car right the first time. We can never build a relationship with you as a client if we can't fix cars. I mean, that's our thing. Our pride is in fixing the car right and fixing it right the first time. Number 2, we are never going to put a part or a service on a vehicle that the car doesn't need. Just like we discussed these shiny brake rotors, it doesn't need them. Terrible, and you need to do them today. Don't even drive it off the rack, like some people do. But in this case, we would just be honest with the guy. Say, hey, I'm not happy with it, but you don't have to waste your money on it today. If you're concerned, sure, we could just, let's save the pads, let's just turn the rotors and get you on your way. Third, we're going to charge a fair price. That's an ambiguous thing, but if you look at our Google reviews, overwhelmingly, we're the down-home, fair, great shop around town that charges a fair price. And the fourth one is make sure the client's happy. Now, when we talk to all of our staff about that, that's really the hardest thing to do. We're kind of like the dentist. Nobody wants to come to see us. You don't want to spend money on your car because it's broken down. You want to go on vacation or out to dinner. Well, maybe not out to dinner anymore right now, but you want to use your money on fun things, not your car. Now, there are some geeks like me that we like spending money on our cars. I mean, it's just, to me, if something new comes out, I got to look at it. I'm just a car nut. But I also want to see what's out there, and I want to do out there. I want to touch it. I want to feel it. To me, relaxing is being in the garage working on my car or my motorcycle. But making a client happy when you got to spend money on their car, that's very difficult. We try our best to do that. For the most part, everybody thanks us when they're done. We helped them. We got them out of trouble. We got them back on the road. We saved their day, their vacation, their week, their whatever. And most of the time, we save money because we fix it right without all the extra BS on it.
All right, so we got a couple questions. What's the highest mileage car that we've worked on?
Oh God, I'm going to say it's probably, we did a story, I think on Facebook last year. We had a delivery van for one client, owned it since brand new, and at that time was 455,000 miles.
Wow.
I know we have multiple delivery vans that are 200,000-300,000 range all the time. Yes.
Okay. Another question, and it's a good thing we have these tires over here. How does somebody know when they need tires?
That's a darn good question. I don't have a penny with me, but
Oh, I'm
I'll get one. So, let's see. Your wife let you have a penny, Bill?
Yeah, I found it in the parking lot.
Okay. So, all right. There is a test everybody could do on that.
Oh, maybe not.
So, anyways, but
Well, you know what? Let's see if we have a tread depth gauge. I'll show
that'll even be better.
tools that we use. Maybe not have. All right.
All right. Okay, this is a tread depth gauge here. And let me get over here, Bill. Maybe this way. Okay, this is a tread depth gauge. And what this basically does is it measures how many 30 seconds of tread there is in it. So literally push that down. And you go for a reading on that. And the one that lines up on this is, see that? That's roughly 30 seconds of tread. When this tire was brand new, it was probably in the 30 seconds range, somewhere around there. So if you take 6 off of 15, it's worn down 9 out of the 15. So this tire is about 2/3 worn at this point in time. A tire is considered worn out anything under 30 seconds. So what actually shows that too, it's real hard to see here, but Bill, if you want to bring the camera, see this little mark right here? You can see this is a raised indentation right here. This is called a wear bar. So when the tire gets worn out and those wear bars are even with the tread, you're totally worn out at that point in time. So if we measure that, you can see we come up in the yellow here already. That's an indication that we're out of tread, if that's with the only tread depth we had left. So when you get to that mark, that tire is basically worn out. Other things you want to consider. I rolled this tire around looking at it while Bill was getting the gauge, so as I spin it, you can see there's little stones in it. This is not abnormal, especially this time of the year. We would just normally just pop those out. And the reason I'm popping them out is I want to see if any of these are real. What I mean by real, have they done any real damage to the vehicle? So let's say I went to pop that out and it was stuck deep in the tread. We may want to patch that or do what we call a plug patch. So as you're inspecting the tires, I roll it around. I got all of those stones out. I don't see any nails. I don't see anything. Now, if you notice, there's a cut here. This tire has a little damage right here. It hit something in the road, but inspecting that, it has not broken down below this level here, so I'm not concerned about that. And I don't see any gouges, cracks, splits, bubbles, bumps, delamination, or anything on that tire. So that tire's got, I'm going to say 10,000 more miles on it, somewhere around there. And again, looking at it, every oil change. Now, this one tells a little bit different story. To the naked eye, you're not going to notice this, but if you look straight down over the tire, you're going to see this edge here starting to round off. It's not quite as straight out. See where the brake is right here? You can see where this is farther down on the tread. See where this mark is where it's running on the road? See where this mark is here? Look how far down this one is. So what that tells me, this tire is literally running down the road like this. So it's wearing this edge more than this edge. And again, look where the wear mark is, the dirt on the tire. See how high it is up off this ridge? Look how low it is on this side. So this tire is running down the road like this. Another thing, this tire has a plug patch in it. It's been plugged right here one time. There's a little cut damage there. Again, not too much to worry about. And I don't see any cuts, damage, whatever, but it's been plugged and patched here at one point in time. Got a little cut. Okay, so what's this tell us? This thing needs alignment. And there's a good chance why we're doing struts today. The struts have worn, the alignment isn't holding, it's running down the road literally on its outside edge like this. So that's causing us the situation that's at. So let's go take a look at the other two tires on the other side.
I'll tell you what, Andy, before we do leave, so let's say this gentleman was on the road and wanted to call about some new tires. What information would somebody need off of this tire?
Okay, that's actually a great question, Bill. But if you look at the tire, kind of hard to see. Let me see, I'll polish it up. Tire tells you everything you need to know right here. Okay, this is the size of the tire. P225/65R17. Okay, and it's got a 100H speed rating, and it's mated for mud and snow. So this is what we would call an all-season tire. So when you give us this data, we could then mark up and do what it is. So let's say you could have this tire exact same size, but be made in 5 different speed ratings. You'd have that tire made to do 150 mile an hour sustained speed. I think our Caravan could do 150 miles an hour, maybe going over a cliff, but yeah, but it's not going to do it. So you would not want to buy a high-level, high-speed tire for a Caravan. So it's very important to give us all this data, and then we're going to determine what your characteristics of driving are, what your habits are, where do you drive, how much do you drive, what do you load in the vehicle? Are you towing a trailer? Are you not towing a trailer? Are you hauling 6 kids in it all the time, or you're not hauling anybody in it all the time? Then we're going to ask you what your budget is. What do you think? To me, I like putting the best possible tire I can on a vehicle, period. And for many reasons. Number one, I have 2 daughters, so I never want them broken down. So to me, I'm going to put the best possible tire I can because I want it to stop right, stop as short as possible. As a tire, different brand tires, different tread depths, different compounds in a tire determines how fast the car will stop. It has nothing to do with anything else on the car, but different tires will stop in different distances. Number 2, how much traction do I got? Certain tires have great traction in the snow and rain. Some tires absolutely are terrible in the snow and rain. In Cleveland, you kind of want the all-season tire almost all the time. And then you also don't want the tire blowing out or wearing out. You know, so getting the best possible tire you could afford, to me, is the best way to go. It always disturbed me when I would get a parent in and go, hey, your son's car, your daughter's car, they're going to need tires and that. Oh, yeah, what's the cheapest ones you got? And I normally come back and say, did you just listen to what you said? What do you mean? So the most loving possession you have in your life, your children, you want to put the cheapest darn tire on the car with no regard to safety, stopping distance, quality, or anything else? Oh, I guess put it that way. Give me the next one up. So,
One last thing on this tire.
Yeah.
So explain what these numbers are here.
okay, well, these are DOT numbers. That's the numbers assigned by the Department of Transportation, and it gives you a law, or basically a serial number for that vehicle. Any new tire sold today, we are to register that tire serial number with the government. So if there's ever a recall on this tire or anything, they know where those tires are at. And it's a date code on there too that tells you when this tire was manufactured. So you could go back and see how old the tire is.
Right. So when was this tire made?
Actually, this one here, if you look at it, 06-18, is that what I could
Yep.
see? Yeah. So this tire was made in the 6th month of 18. So this tire is literally only going to be 2 years old, which gives you a testament. It's about 2/3 worn. It's 2 years old. This guy's probably going to get about another year. You know, so those are all things. As we know our clients and we know their driving habits and we know what they're doing, then we can help them make the right choices. So in this case, though, knowing that he's hauling this equipment around and this is more used as a commercial vehicle, I would probably look at increasing the load capacity of the tire a little bit. I don't see any indication that these are not wearing well, but it couldn't hurt. It'd be a discussion I would have with the client. But definitely there's a discussion over why.
All right. So we did get a question about if we're doing this next week. If we have a request to do it in a specific topic, we certainly can.
On that note, anything you ever want, let us know. Bill and I will whip it out together. It's no problem. So looking at this tire again, we can see exactly the same thing. Wear patterns up on the side here high, down on this side high. So that's telling me again, this tire's running down the road. Of course, this is a big exaggeration, people. I mean, it's literally running down the road just a little bit. I'm doing a vast exaggeration that it's this way. So let's look this tire over. Hey, and this is no secret, by the way. This is exactly what we do. I mean, you literally look it over. All right, now, look at this. A little concerning thing there. I don't think it's a big deal. Yeah, you never know. Okay. That one is down in there pretty good. Okay, it's still a stone. Now, many times you will find that that's a screw or a nail that's actually down in the tire. It may have not poked all the way through yet, but it's worn off even with there, but as it wears, it's gonna push it deeper into the tire and then you will have that leak. So those are the ones I'd like to take out just to make sure. Again, I don't see anything abnormal here. It's, I'm worried about. What I noticed, very little, if you look down these channels, there is a slight distortion right here where it kind of goes like this. And it's very difficult to see, but it's right there. And I think that's just a defect in how the tire was manufactured. But what we're looking at is, if you get a cord separation in this tire, the tires are laid and made, they literally take cords and they lay over each other. It's a radial tire, so they actually cross them like this. Then there's a band that goes around. Those cords start to separate. What we will see is these channels will actually go, you'll actually see them shift a little bit. That's a indicator that tire is definitely bad. It's starting to come up. And again, so this tire here, my recommendation is this goes on the back now. Just put it on the back so that it gets the less turning wear, and we can maybe get this to level out after it's aligned. So let me see one more.
So I'll tell you what, Andy, this will be the last thing that we do, and then we're going to cut it. But there is a question about tires.
Okay.
If somebody has to put their spare on,
Yes.
how long can they drive on that spare before they get it to a location?
That's a great question. You're going to have to check your owner's manual. The reason for, there's a multitude of different spares out there. Some vehicles have a full-size spare like we used to have back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and you could go like nothing changed. A lot of vehicles have mini spares, some have inflatable spares, some have no spares at all. So read the manual, and in most cases, almost most cases, it's going to be right on the spare. It's going to say, don't drive over 50 miles an hour for more than 50 miles, or don't exceed 25 miles an hour. It'll be stated in your vehicle. Your vehicle specific has to tell you that. Are we running out of time, Bob?
Yep, this will be the last thing, and then I guess we will do one next week because we didn't cover everything we wanted to.
All right, so I'm looking at these tires. Well, I didn't even get under the hood yet, Bill.
Well, we'll do that next week. How's that?
All right, again, not as much wear on this side, but look at the wear pattern high up on this side here. Here's the wear pattern right here. If you do a judgment, see the sidewall indicator here where that bead is? The wear is all the way up here. So let's say that's almost an inch. On this side, here's our wear pattern all the way to here. Again, this tire is going like this. So what did we learn today? 3 of the 4 tires on this vehicle are not aligned right. We only had 1 tire that the wear pattern was completely straight on. So we need to look at the back of this thing too when we align it, and that's why it's going to need a 4-wheel alignment. So when we as professionals come to you as a client and say, hey, we're going to recommend a 4-wheel alignment on your car, this is what we're basing it off of. We're not pulling that out of the air. That's coming off our actual physical observation with it. Is that going to cause you to lose control today? Is it going to cause anything major? No. What it's going to cause is you're going to be buying tires a heck of a lot sooner than you should. And there is some issues with maybe slight handling, especially when it's wet out, because the tire is not laying flat on the ground. It's laying a little bit like this, so it's not going to track and it's not going to grip as well as it should. So alignment has a lot to do with safety. To me, probably one of the most overlooked things on the vehicle today because you don't see it. It's kind of like the coronavirus. It's the hidden killer. You know, it's the hidden killer of tires because you don't see that your tires are wearing ever so slightly all the time.
Good deal.
Thanks for all for watching us, and I guess we'll be back next week.